Are you preparing for AWS interviews? Learning random questions and then forgetting the answers in interviews. Very journal problem, and don't do this mistake. Cracking interviews needs smart preparation. Remember, focus more on important questions, not all. So in this video, I will show you the top 10 most important AWS interview questions, especially if you are a beginner in AWS. And not just definitions. I will explain each question step by step like this with simple diagrams, so that even if you are new to AWS, still you will understand each and everything. After watching this video, you can easily explain the answers in your interviews, and you will be ready to face your next AWS interview with confidence. So let's start with the first question. What are the main cloud service models? Explain the difference between IaaS, PaaS and SaaS with AWS example. Now maybe you have heard about this before, but today after listening to the answer, you can explain this to anyone. Okay, let me give you my own example. So when I was a developer, I was 90% time focused on the application code and the database. But to manage one production application from start to end, many things are needed. To manage an application in your company, this full computing stack is required. Here are different layers, okay? At the top, these developers are handling this application and data. This is managed by developers, okay? Then there is the IT or the infra team who do the bottom task like the runtime, like for example you install Java runtime, .NET framework on the server, Node.js frameworks, so that done by the IT team. Then your application might need some middleware like MS Office, some third-party software your application need, MS Office, SAP or something else, some other API. Okay. Below that, OS like Windows server your application is hosted, or the Linux server, so that IT team will install. Then virtualization is required to simulate the hardware. Okay. Then physical servers, definitely where your application will be hosted. That physical server must be secured, updated and monitored, right? And IT team will also install the antivirus to secure your servers. Next we have the storage, because your application have some images, they have some files, some database, so some storage on the server is required. And finally the networking part. Networking on server is required to connect all the servers databases together. So this is the entire setup from runtime to networking, which is handled by the IT or the infrastructure team. So both developers and IT team work together for your company. Okay, meaning this fully on-premise setup is handled and managed by your company only. Okay, and honestly it's a lot of work. Now AWS or any other cloud platform provides three major cloud service models to lighten and to make your work simpler, your company work. First model is IaaS, infrastructure as a service. In infrastructure IaaS, application, data, runtime, middleware, OS will be managed by your company. Okay, but virtualization, server, storage, networking will be managed by AWS. So your company work is less now, right? So basically infra or IT team has less work to do, right? Second most popular is platform as a service. This is the most popular cloud model. Okay, here your company mostly focused on application and data only. Okay, Rest of the things, runtime, middleware, OS, networking, server storage, so everything is managed by AWS. Okay. Third model is software as a service, SaaS. And here everything is managed by AWS, including the application and the data. Okay. Your company just have to subscribe and use this software. For example, if you have heard about Amazon Workmail or Salesforce or Office 365, these are SaaS platforms. Your company just uses these services as a user. Your company do not have to develop code or configure anything in the AWS. No technical work is required in SaaS. Okay. So that is the simple story of IaaS, PaaS and SaaS. And now listen carefully. All these are just, we discussed this application, data, runtime. These are layers, not actual AWS services. Each layer includes some specific services. For example, there is a service Amazon EC2. It is the part of the servers, IaaS. Okay. Server layer. So Amazon S3 or EBS are actual services and part of the storage layer. Okay. So as a AWS developer, you will mostly working on the implementing AWS services, not the layers. Layers needed for the understanding. Okay. And in the upcoming question, we will focus on services, not layers, but I hope now layers are clear to you. And also you know that mostly you have to work, if you are a AWS developer, you have to work on IaaS or PaaS, because on-premise is completely different. It is physical servers, it's not cloud. And SaaS, AWS developer do not have to do anything. It's just a service which your company has to do directly. That's it. Okay, great. So that is the whole idea of these three cloud models. If it is clear to you, write crystal clear in the comments or chat box. That will boost your confidence and help you remember this forever. And yes, I have also added minimum definition and description of all the layers in this book, so that I already explained it, but yes, I have given it here in the book, so that if you later want to revise, then you can revise quickly from the book. Okay, again, don't try to memorize it, so it's not needed, but try to understand it. Okay. What are the main categories of AWS services? What are the top 25 services? Now let me show you first AWS Management Console. Here it is. If you log in into AWS, then this is your AWS Cloud Console, where you can use the AWS services. Here, if I will click this view all services of AWS. Okay, see, all these are like this: compute, developer tools, machine, containers, storage, and many more. These are the categories. Okay. And now each category have many services. This compute have EC2, light sail, many services. Okay. So in short, there are hundreds and hundreds of services provided by AWS. But it's not possible for anyone to learn or use all of these services, right? That's why now let's come back to the slide. And here I will list top 25 AWS services that are the most important and used 80% of the time in your application. You can build 80% of the application by using this just 20% services. First category is compute service. Second category is database. Inside this we have the main services also I have written here. Then we have storage, then we have networking and content delivery category, next messaging and integration, and the security services, and the last one is the infra and DevOps services. 80 to 90% of the application only need these services I have written here. So for example, if you are a developer, then you need to host your application, you can use this EC2, or you can use the elastic Beanstalk or Lambda or ECS. Okay, if you want a database, you can use RDS. So I will explain all of these services one by one in upcoming questions, so that you do not have any confusion in these services at least. And most importantly, I will explain when to use which type of services, when to use EC2, when to use elastic Beanstalk for hosting the application. Okay, so based on the situation it is required. Now that is the important thing, and these services we are going to learn in the going to learn in the upcoming question. And let's move on. And yes, if you have not yet accepted my never give up challenge, then do accept it. Keep giving the interviews until you get the success like these candidates. And the day you get success, share your success story with me. Write never give up in comments to accept the challenge. What is a resource in AWS? What is the difference between a resource and a service? Yeah, I know it sounds very easy, but I don't want to take any chance with any confusion. So let's quickly understand it. Let's go to my AWS Management Console. Here it is. Here, for example, to host your application, you need EC2 instance. So here is EC2 instance. Let's press it, and here it is. Now you will find the launch instance option for EC2. Now listen carefully. When I press launch instance, that means an instance of the EC2 service will be created in my AWS account. Okay, that specific instance we call a resource. So basically, after creating the resource, I can use it for any purpose in the cloud. For example, I can host my application inside that EC2 instance, and in the same way I can create multiple resources in my AWS account for different services also, like RDS instance for database, S3 instance for storage, Lambda instance for serverless function. So that's how. Now let's go back to the slide. For example, this is your AWS cloud, and there are many services available here like this, Elastic Beanstalk. Okay, now your company AWS developer can use any of these services by creating instances of them like this. Okay, and those created instances in your company account are called resources. Okay, and you can name them as per your convenience. So if you are a developer, just understand it like AWS service is like a class, and AWS resource is like an object or instance of that class. Great. Now you are 100% sure what is a service, what is a resource, what is the difference. Here is the easy to remember definition. AWS service is a tool or feature offered by the AWS to perform tasks like computing, storage, network security. AWS resource is an instance of that service that you create, configure, and use in the cloud. For example, AWS service is like a class, AWS resource is like an object or instance of that class. Okay, now this simple diagram and theory in this book will help you in the quick revision for your interviews. Now for a single application hosting, you have to create many resources. Now how to manage those resources, that I will cover in the upcoming questions. What are AWS regions and availability zones? How they are different? From the name itself, you can understand region means some physical location. So for example, here is the world map, and it shows the region. These dots shows the regions or the geographical locations where AWS has multiple data centers. So all these dots, blue dots, are the regions. Okay, now as I mentioned earlier, your company do not need to maintain physical servers in its offices. No on-premise services, right? Instead, your company can simply subscribe to and use cloud resources from AWS via internet. And your company have to choose the AWS region, which location is closer to your company, so that the users of your company can get faster access. Okay, here is the definition. AWS region is a geographical area where AWS has multiple data centers. Now, what is availability zones? Within a single AWS regions, there can be multiple physical separate data centers. These are called availability zones. Remember, AWS regions means AWS services are fully available in a location. For example, in Mumbai, in North Virginia, Singapore. These are the regions. But the actual physical data center location within each region are the availability zones. So there are multiple data center present inside one region. That is possible, because if tomorrow one data center is failed, then other data center will immediately provide the backup, right? Here is the definition. AWS availability zone is a physically separate data center within a AWS region. It ensures high availability by protecting your application from failure in a single data center, and that's the answer to this question. Before moving forward, ask yourself just one thing. What is the point of learning AWS if you can't crack the AWS interviews? That's why I have created a complete AWS interview preparation bootcamp for you with 3 powerful tools. Number 3, 200 plus AWS interview questions from all the topics step by step. Even if you are AWS beginner, still you can learn everything here. Also, the real scenario based questions are covered. Then in this Smart Excel, you can mark questions prepared or not prepared, and therefore you can track your interview preparation progress like this. Second tool is this PDF book for quick revision just before your AWS interviews. And first tool is 10 AWS mock interviews to help you practice just like the real interviews. Many students have already cracked interviews with my courses. You can be the next. Remember, just one missed question can lead to interview rejection. Why take the chance then? Check out all the links in the description. If interested, great. If not, no worries. Let's move to the next question. What are AWS compute services? Name a few of them. Now listen very carefully to the answer. The answer is AWS service that do computations are called compute services. Let me explain it, okay? See, compute services are those services that handle computations. Computations means processing or executing your application logic. Like you have processor in your computer to process programs. Same way. For example, here are some AWS compute services, popular one. So Amazon EC2, Elastic Compute Cloud is an AWS compute service because you can use it as a server to host and process and execute your applications. Okay. Then AWS Lambda is used for serverless computation. Then AWS Elastic Beanstalk is also used for deploying applications without managing infrastructure. And then EC2 auto scaling is there for used for scaling the EC2 instances automatically. Now don't worry, I will explain this in detail in upcoming question, but for now Just understand that these services are used for computation, processing, and that's why they are called AWS Compute Services. Okay, here is the final definition. AWS Compute Services provide cloud-based processing power, auto-scaling, and execution environments for applications. That's it. Now in the upcoming question, we will understand the first and very important compute service, and that is EC2 in detail. What are Amazon EC2 instances? When would you use them in a project? To be very short and simple, EC2 are just like the servers where you host your application. Here is a very simple diagram. You have hosted one application, which is front end is hosted on this physical server, okay, and back end or API server is hosted on this separate physical server. Similarly, this is on-premise application. Similarly, in the AWS cloud, we call these servers as the EC2 instances like this. EC2 stands for Elastic Compute Cloud. In short, mostly we use EC2 instance to host application. But like you can use the server for many other purposes, similarly you can also use EC2 instances also for many other purposes like running the background processes and others. It's just like a CPU. Here is the simple and easy to remember definition. EC2 instances are cloud-based virtual servers that allows to run application without needing to buy or manage physical hardware. That's it. Now you may ask, is EC2 is the best and the simplest and the fastest for hosting application? The answer is no. So which one is the best for hosting application? That I will share in the upcoming question. What is AWS Elastic Beanstalk? For what purpose can you use it? If you are from a development background, then this is one of the top AWS service you will use. Now, if you remember IaaS, which stands for Infrastructure as a Service, then EC2 is the example of IaaS, meaning if you are using EC2, then you are using IaaS model of cloud. Because to host application, you will also take care of many things which are in IaaS only, okay? So EC2, you have to manage many things. You have to install the operating system. You have to, for application hosting, you have to install the frameworks to host your application, many things. But there is, if you remember, PaaS, which stands for Platform as a Service, then is this model. As a developer, you only need to provide the application code, data, configuration, and nothing else. For this, you do not have to create the EC2 instance or configure load balancer or manage the underlying this infrastructure. Okay, all of them automatically handled by AWS. You just need to create your web app, API, or backend service, front end, and deploy it using the Elastic Beanstalk. That's it. So whether you are building a web app, a REST API, mobile backend, you can use Elastic Beanstalk of the service of the AWS. Okay, and EBS lets you deploy your application in the cloud with few clicks only. It's the simplest way to deploy or host your application in AWS cloud. Here is the simple and easy to remember definition. AWS Beanstalk is a fully managed platform as a service that enable developers to deploy and scale also web application and services without managing the infrastructure. Okay, so simple definition like this will help you to revise easily from the book before your interview so that you don't forget the answers. Now you may ask, If Beanstalk is the right choice, the best choice, simplest choice for a hosting application, then why we have EC2? Good question. So that I will explain in the upcoming question. But yes, before that I will explain some features of Beanstalk so that you can easily understand Beanstalk in a very complete way, and you will know that why Beanstalk is so popular. It is very popularly used. What is AWS storage? What are the types of AWS storage? Now, after listening to this, you will feel more confident. As a developer, you know there are different types of files that your application handles. For example, there are readable files like Word file or PDF file. Then there are images files like PNG or JPG, and also data files like CSV or text files, right? So to handle and to store different types of data files in the best way, AWS provides different types of storage services. Okay, so the first is the very popular one, and that is Amazon S3, Simple Storage Service. S3 stands for Simple Storage Service. S3 is best used to store unstructured data like images, videos, backups, documents, and more. Okay, it is the most popular one because nowadays everyone is creating videos, watching videos, right? And the videos you are watching right now, maybe it is also here hosted in some AWS hosted website. If it is in AWS, then this video is stored in S3 storage only. Okay. Second type of storage is Amazon EFS, Elastic File System. EFS provides cloud-based shared file storage. Okay. And the third type is Amazon EBS, which stands for Elastic Block Storage, which provide block level storage. Okay. Now I know I'm just giving one line answer right now, but don't worry, in the upcoming question I will explain each of these AWS storage in detail with the real example, like when to use which one. Okay, that I will explain more, because that in interviews they will ask you when to use this storage, when to use that storage, like this. Okay, but yes, now you know the main types of storage, and here is a simple and easy to remember definition. AWS storage is a cloud-based storage solution that allows you to store, access, and manage data over the internet safely and reliably. I hope this diagram and definition in this book will help you in doing the quick revision before your interviews from this book. What is AWS Route 53? How does it manage global traffic? Let's understand this 100%. Imagine you are working as a lead developer in a very big company like Amazon or Microsoft, and your application is hosted globally in the AWS cloud. Okay, for example, here you have one set of EC2 instances like this in region 1, New York, or any region. Okay, and another set of EC2 instances are in Mumbai. Okay, similarly you have users who are accessing your applications from USA, and there are some users which are accessing your applications from India. Now you want that when the users are sending requests from near USA users, those should be redirected to New York region like this, because New York region is close to USA users and they will get the response faster, right? For that, you can use Amazon Route 53 service like this. Route 53 will receive all the requests and distribute the request based on the closest region. So here when users from India will or near India will send the request, they will be redirected to the Mumbai region. So AWS Route 53 distributes user traffic based on the location so that users request goes to the nearest region and response is faster. That is the role of Route 53. But yes, one more thing. Once the request will reach this New York or Mumbai region, here you can set up the load balancers. It is possible inside those regions, and then you can equally distribute the request between the multiple EC2 instances. Okay, so that is the full picture and real use case of Route 53 in real projects. And here is the simple definition. Route 53 is a DNS-based traffic routing service that distributes user requests across AWS regions based on rules like user locations or latency. So, what is the meaning of latency? Location, you understand. Latency, what is the meaning of latency? Latency, for example, if region 1, this New York region, suppose it is down or it is slow for some time, then Route 53 will redirect the USA users also to the Mumbai region, to the region 2, because region 1 New York is down. That also Route 53 will manage, and that is the answer to this latency. Okay, so this diagram and definition will help you in revising the concept quickly from this book. Now in the upcoming question, I will show you what is subnet, which is like the kid or son of the VPC only. What is infrastructure as code? Explain how it works in AWS. So explain cloud formation. Very good question, and by the end of this you will have a complete understanding of the whole process. So just like an application developer writes code to build an application, then build an application, same way the DevOps teams writes code to deploy that application into different environments. Let me explain. For example, let's say you are a developer. You create one application in .NET, Java or Node. Then developer pushes or code commit the code to the source control like GitHub. Okay. If the build is successful and everything pass, then the DevOps team member will manually pick up the code, DevOps team, from the source code and deploy the application using some AWS code pipeline or AWS console. So this is the part of CI/CD pipeline. So DevOps team will manually deploy this code into the dev environment, then in the staging environment, and then finally when everything is passed, in the same code in the production environment, right? And yes, mostly in dev environment only development team will deploy, but for staging, QA or production, DevOps team deploy mostly. So far this looks very good, but here is the problem. When the DevOps team is deploying manually, they also need to install some dependencies on the server, like they have to install the RDS for database, S3 for storage, EC2 instances, or other AWS services that the application needs in each environment, right? Now imagine some DevOps team member manually set up everything, including all dependencies in very fine in the staging and QA environment, and application is working fine. But then the same team member or some other DevOps team member just forget one simple dependency in the production environment, because it's a manual process. So what will happen next? Application will crash because of those misdependency in the production environment, right? And client will kill you. So that is the problem, and here we have the infrastructure as code, which will solve this problem. Instead of manual step, first we will remove this manual deployment process, and now DevOps engineers will write some code using tools like AWS CloudFormation, or Terraform is a very it's a outside AWS tool, but it's very effective. very popular also. So this code we will call as IAC, infrastructure as code, because all the infrastructure will be written here inside this code. So this code will also be stored in the source control, just like the application code. And it is automatically provision all the same way rest of the development, QA and production automatically with the same configuration. Like all the dependencies which are written in for staging, same dependency will be written in the code for production also. Okay. And because the IAC code is version controlled and it's reviewed just like the normal code, so there is no chance of missing any dependency, any setup or any manual errors. You just have to run the code to deploy the applications in the different environments. Okay. And before running the code, definitely you will test it multiple times, right? Just like in the application. So that is the power of infrastructure as code, which will remove the human manual errors from the previous process. That's it. If the concept is now very much clear to you, then write crystal clear in the comments or chat so that you remember this process forever. Finally, here is the simple and easy to remember definition. Infrastructure as code is a DevOps practice that allows you to define, provision and manage infrastructure using code instead of manual process. Okay. So in the cloud. So that's it. This diagram and this definition will help you in revision for your interviews from this book very easily. Great job, my friend, for completing this. Most will only talk, but the way you have finished this shows your seriousness and dedication towards your AWS goal. Now, if this video helped you, then there are many more important questions left. Like this: what is SNS, what is SQS, what is DLQ, what is CloudFront, CloudWatch, etc. So all I have explained in my complete AWS interview bootcamp. Many of my students have already used my courses to crack their interviews. Now, if you don't want to miss a single question for your next interview, then check out the bootcamp and book link in the description below.